Warning. The following audiobook experience handles delicate subjects such as rape and mental illness, and has some intense moments and innuendo. It is not intended for younger audiences or for those who may be triggered by these topics. Thank you. Cursed. A story by Fluff Dragon. Part 1. Adrienne gasped and looked away, but knew it was already too late. 5 years as queen. 5 years of dealing with Councilman Havard's oiled countenance. She should have known better. She scanned for some way of escape in the throng of ballroom dancers, but everywhere she stepped, the surrounding crowd would allow her the proper 2 paces of space, giving away her position. Ironic that the law designed to keep her safe now betrayed her. She could make out her husband's form across the sea of glittering gowns and robed gentlemen. If she could just...
Your Majesty?
Adrienne bit her lip and took in a breath, taking care not to make too much noise, and turned around with the smile she'd practiced since she was very small.
Yes, Councilman. Are you enjoying yourself?
I am trying, Your Majesty. But you are so very diverting from the rest of the young ladies in the room. Has His Highness brought you a true silk gown?
Adrienne blinked to hide the scowl that threatened to rise. Havard knew full well how both she and her husband had agreed to keep their own expenses minimal while focusing on bettering the kingdom. The line her father had drawn between bloodlines had cut deep. The councilman's comment, designed to jab at her beloved Marcus's ability to provide, no doubt, earned several scowls from the guests who resided in the lower village, and she blushed.
What can I do for you, Councilman?
She took a deep breath to help her keep her smile in place. Havard inched closer, to the point where Adrienne felt uncertain whether she could call the guards without treading on broken glass with her guests.
So many things, Your Majesty. But for now, a simple dance, perhaps?
He'd practiced that inflection. In spite of the distance, only she had heard the first of what he'd said. The last was loud enough for the immediate audience to hear, but not so loud as to catch anyone else's attention, such as Marcus or Gaius, the guard captain. Backed into a corner. She'd promised to refuse a dance with no one upon their first request. It had been intended as a peace offering, an attempt to unite the classes, and now it had grown fangs. The night was still young, and none of the other guests had asked her as of yet. If she refused a councilman, no one else would dare ask, and the opportunity to heal past wounds would vanish. She'd already waited too long to give an answer. The crowd's movements had slowed to listen in, to see what she'd do.
Of course, Councilman.
Armed with her permission, Havard crossed the threshold and signaled the orchestra, who started to play a song that made the entire room groan. Several couples moved to the drinks and hors d'oeuvres, while others sat in the chairs, fanning themselves. Instead of remaining on the dance floor, however, Havard steered Adrienne through the crowd and into the adjacent room. Her heart began to race. He'd planned this. In a moment of panic, she tried to pull away, but he surprised her with his strength.
Just hear me out, Your Majesty. You're going to want to listen to what I have to say.
Adrienne blinked. Had she misjudged the councilman? Was there a danger in the room she'd missed in trying to avoid a mere annoyance? No, Marcus would have seen it first. Her chest felt as if it wanted to implode as she realized someone had sealed off the room they'd entered. All of the curtains hung shut. No furniture or rugs decorated the bare stone floor. The only light glowed from a few well-placed candelabras and a fireplace roaring to Adrienne's left. For a moment, she wondered why the servants had lit it. None of the guests would come in here.
No more excuses, Adrienne. No more evasions. I respected your decisions for years, no matter how eccentric. The poor excuse of a man you chose has failed to produce an heir. It's time you placed your people above your fancies. The kingdom needs a successor, and I will happily...
Wait!
Adrienne took a step back.
What in the name of the 5 are you doing? Calling us by our given name, insulting us and your king? Have you taken leave of all sense?
Havard's face darkened.
I am offering you redemption from becoming the most laughed-at ruler in our history, Your Majesty. I am the only eligible noble on the council, and the obvious choice for replacement as king. The others...
Adrienne scowled, unable to hold up any more facades.
They put you up to this, didn't they?
It was a unanimous agreement, Adrienne. You need an intervention. We were willing to allow your fancies for a while, but the inability to produce an heir
is business between our husband and ourselves. The council has no right to—
The council has every right, your majesty. An heir must have at least half royal blood, or they cannot rule, so adoption is out. What other choice is there?
Perhaps it's time to reconsider such a law. Has the council ever thought about that? Which is worse, having a ruler with an unknown lineage, or having one who cannot keep oaths even to those for whom they deeply care?
The hard lines in Havard's face divided his furious expression like an ill-pieced puzzle.
I warn you, Adrienne. If you refuse me, the council has given me permission to remove you from power.
She raised a brow.
While the people are already in unrest? Does the council truly believe denouncing the only advocates for the welfare of their so-called peasants will allow them to rule without question?
Havard laughed.
You forget how fickle the minds of the masses can be. You've only ruled for 5 years, Majesty. Hardly enough time to earn true love from your subjects. But no, I never said anything about denouncing you. We cannot have a leader that people can rally around to fight our attempts in restoring order.
Adrienne felt her insides freeze over as a silver blade in Havard's hand caught the light of the fire. She opened her mouth to scream, but Havard grasped her throat, trapping her breath and holding her against the wall so high her feet dingled in the air. In a wild attempt to break free, she jammed her heel just below his ribcage, knocking the breath out of him and making him drop her. She collapsed, sucking in air of her own and forcing her legs to move forward. The sound of tearing fabric followed her and she cursed, pulling at her skirt to free it from the embedded dagger. Havard coughed, hoisting himself up.
I wish you hadn't done that, Your Majesty. I was going to ensure your passage was as painless and honorable as possible. Now I think you owe me a little entertainment first.
He picked up the dagger with an ease that made Adrienne's heart stop. The momentum sent her to the floor. But now, she could think a little better. She kicked out at the door and screamed with every ounce of breath she had stored in her lungs. Havard glared at her, backing into the shadows and sheathing his dagger as he hissed.
Blood and kin of Iron Fang, I say unto you, rise.
Adrienne gasped in pain as the feeling of 1,000 blades easing their way into her skin crawled across her body, her lungs raging as if being consumed in fire. She saw Marcus and several guards burst into the room, swords drawn, but even as her husband held her, examining her for injury, she couldn't shake the haze of her vision. As she forced herself to breathe, the feeling passed, and she retched on the floor.